Hi, I'm Wendy Welsh from Wendy's Quilts and More, and I'm here to talk about hand piecing. Why do people hand piece? It's exactly the same reasons as people English paper piece. It gives us greater accuracy than a sewing machine piecing when we're dealing with tiny pieces of fabric or complex designs with lots of Y seams. Here's some examples. This is a little star I've pieced recently, and I did the center first, like this, and then I went right around the outside, adding all the white pieces. These are some blocks I made for the Dear Jen program run by Jen Kingwell. You'll see the Y seams up there, which are quite easy to do with hand piecing. And these little pieces all in here, this was all done by hand piecing, much easier than on the sewing machine. I've been hand piecing for 2 years now, and I've made three large hand pieced quilts. I find hand piecing easier on my hands than English paper piecing, and it's quicker to prepare the fabrics too. I've attended hand piecing classes with Jen Kingwell and Wendy Welsh from Australia, and William Hammerstein from the Netherlands, who hand pieced all the quilts in her Milfury Quilts books. Hand piecing's always been far more popular than English paper piecing in Europe. So today I'll talk about the supplies needed for hand piecing, and then I'll demonstrate how I do the stitching. The first step of hand piecing is marking the stitching lines on the back of the fabric, and this can be done in a number of ways. One option is acrylic templates. The first style here I've got has a cutout center, so the cutting line is on the outside and the stitching line is on the inside. We draw around this acrylic template onto the fabric. It's always good to use sandpaper when you're drawing onto the fabric, whether it's just a sheet of sandpaper like this from a hardware shop, or it's a special sandpaper board made by Jen Kingwell. I use this propeller pencil by So Line. It's also got two colour biro ink in it as well, but the leads come down as I need more. And I place my template right beside the previous shape, hold it firmly, draw around on the back of the fabric, draw around the outside, and then I draw those inside stitching lines as well. So when I've drawn as many of those shapes as I need, I cut them out with scissors. I might use these Karen K Buckley scissors, which are very good for this purpose. Or sometimes I use these Fiskars scissors. Or you can even use these smaller scissors. But when the line is this long, I like to use a longer blade than this. Oh, if the fabric is a dark colour or highly patterned, you might like to use a green pen. Sometimes the pencil doesn't show up. So I've got this green pen here from a stationery shop, or even got a white pen as well. Pilot. It's a biro as well as this one. I've never had trouble with these washing out and marking the fabric, but I would suggest you test first before you use biro. So if you can't get acrylic templates like that, you might get acrylic templates like this that have got tiny little holes marked in them. So the pencil goes through these holes, and we join those lines, ruling between these lines to mark the stitching line. The outside's the cutting line. I check on my fabric first to find the grain, which way that way has got more give than that way. So I put the longest side of the triangle on the side with the least give. And again, I put that next to my previous one, draw around the two sides because that side's already going to be matching. Mark these spots. You can see 3 tiny dots. I join them up like this, And there I've got the stitching lines and the cutting line. And again, I cut that out with scissors. I never use a rotary cutter with small templates like this. So some of you might have templates like this at home and wondering why they put holes in the corners. This is exactly why, so you can use these kind of triangles by So Easy, or I've got a full range of hexagons as well that have the registration marks drilled through them, so you can use these for hand piecing templates if you wish. If you can't get acrylic templates for the block you're going to make, you can make your own from template plastic. You buy this at quilt shops and you trace over the design for the block and you cut these out. Now these are the sewing lines, not the cutting lines. So if you're going to use these kind of homemade templates, yes, you draw around this, but then you need to add 1/4 of an inch for the seam allowance for the cutting line. Some people just eyeball it and cut, but I would much rather have a marked line and keep it accurate, because it helps with the piecing to have an accurate line. This little wheel is called Add 1/4 inch, and it's by Jen Kingwell, available from Amity Textiles in Australia or other quilt shops worldwide. That's an Add 1/4 inch. So now I have my sewing line and my cutting line. It's a great little invention. If you are going to be making templates like this, I strongly recommend you label them. I've got DJ for Dear Jane, block 5, piece A. Otherwise you can end up with a whole lot that look very similar. If you not using templates like that, rubber stamps are very popular in Europe as a way of putting hand piecing lines onto fabric. Again, I'd probably use my sandpaper board or my quilting board to keep the fabric still, but you can see that I've used this rubber stamp adhered to an acrylic block. This ink, this is Memento ink, and I've stamped these. I can see right through, and again I put these as close as possible to the one next door to save on the cutting lines and to maximize the number I can get out of the fabric. There's another acrylic block, and when I've stamped as many as I need, again I just cut them with the scissors, and this is what they look like. They're beautifully crisp lines and very accurate because it's come from a stamp. They're all identical. The fourth major option is Inklingo, which is a system developed by Linda Franz, and it's PDF files that print shapes onto fabric through your home inkjet printer. I haven't used that myself, but I know a number of people who do and they think it's great, so that's another option. So once you've got your stitching lines marked on your fabric, what else do you need? Needles. They need to be long and thin. Milliners or straw needles are the best. This is the needle I use, long and thin. This is a Tulip brand needle. I use milliners size 10. Tulip needles are expensive, but this needle actually has flexibility in it and will bend as I'm weaving through the fabric. And I just look after them and they last a long time. As for the thread, if I'm doing something like this and it's all going to be the same color, and especially if I need to get a tight center, I will use a thread that matches the fabric. In this case, I always use Aurifil 50 weight, just regular sewing weight thread for hand piecing. When I come to add the white bits on, I don't use the green anymore. I use a neutral color. I love Orifil 2605, a very nice natural grey that goes with many things and is virtually invisible in hand piecing. And finally, pins, these tiny little applique pins. These are what I use for hand piecing. These are highly recommended by other people who hand piece. These are by Clover and the product number is 231. They're applique pins. Right, so now I'm ready to hand piece. I'm going to use pink thread right now so you can clearly see my stitches. Of course I wouldn't normally use pink, I'd use my neutral grey. I'll cut a piece about 16 inches long. I definitely wouldn't go any longer than 20 inches or it'll just get tangled up. The eye on the milliner's needle is very small, but I got it first time. Just going to swap to my other glasses now so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so just like regular machine piecing, it's right sides together. I'm going to start at this corner, so I always put a little pin through the top layer first, then I'll turn it over and check where it's coming out and move it until I get it right where I want it to be. So I'll just pin that. I only need one pin for the length of the seam. So no knot in my thread at the moment. We're going to do a tailor's knot. So in immediately I'm checking and I'm moving the back if I need to get it right in the corner. In and out and leave a tail. Then in and out the same holes again, but I leave the needle just in the fabric. Take the top thread and twist it one way around the needle, take the bottom thread and twist it the other way around the needle. So I've got one out that side, one out this side. Then when I pull through gently, this will form a little knot. There's a tiny knot there now, and the thread won't come through. You can take another back stitch over that if you wish, but I don't. I just start now. And as I stitch along here with tiny stitches, I'm always checking every couple of stitches. I check on the back that I'm still on that line. If you've cut the pieces, if you've had the cutting line marked accurately at 1/4 inch, both pieces should match nicely on the top and make this easier. So I load up as many as I like on the needle and then I pull through. And there you can see the stitches, and I check on the back, they're nicely on the line too. Take a little back stitch here to just lock the stitches, and I carry on into the corner. I want to be coming up at the corner. So there, and then I do a back stitch here to lock it in place. Sometimes I even do a little knot here. These tailor's knots are so small that you can easily do them at intersections and they don't add any bulk to the sewing. So, all looking good. Then I go down into the side I've just come from to get a nice sharp corner. You can check in here if you like. If you feel you're catching the next piece, lift it up and have a look. But no, I'm not. So I go down into that. That's all been just those two pieces so far. But now on the back, I'm going to go through to the next piece. So not catching the front at all. This is just the back, straight through between those two pieces. Now here's the trick bit. The beauty of making a Y seam like this, you just swing this piece around and you're ready to stitch up here. So I'll put a little pin in here for the end that I'm going to now. and I'll come up from this new piece out to the front to the white piece. I'll go straight back down and back up at the same piece again. There's lots of back stitching involved in this to lock the pieces in, and that's giving us a very nice tight corner here. And now I'll stitch out to the pin, checking the back as I go. My stitches aren't as tiny as some people who've been hand piecing for many years, but it's perfectly adequate to hold the two pieces of fabric together. And remember, we're going to quilt over these pieces of fabric anyway in the future. So at this stage I think I could go there and up at the corner, but I'll squeeze in an extra one. One there and a tiny one here. Again, locking into the corner, another tailor's knot. I take the top thread one way, I hold it with those two fingers, and I take the bottom thread the other way and I pull through. Now I'm going to go through to the back and I'm going to pick up my next piece, which is a triangle, and it's going to go there. So I'll pin this into the corner and come out. The threads on the back. When I add a new piece, I'm going to come up and I'll just check that I am catching the white piece, the last piece, so I don't want that. So I redo that out the top, down again, but I want that aligned. Back up at the start, and I'm off. Now if you find that the back, your needle isn't hitting the line on the back, I use these two fingers to move the fabric either up or down as required. I'm getting a bit off the line now, so I'm going to come back to where it was on the line and I'm going to pull the needle through and be happy with just 1, 2, 3 stitches on that time, and use these two fingers to change the alignment of the pieces, or even take the pin out if I need to, and I carry on down to the corner. I take the pin out now when I'm a few stitches from the corner. One there, a single one, and another one here. Now I didn't do a back stitch on this row, but these pieces are really quite short, these seams, so it's not that vital. Oh, I'm a little bit off the line there, but I'll just keep going to show you what I would do if I was on the line. I would do my tailor's knot again, go through to the back, then go through to the next piece across the back, and then swivel my triangle right round, because we're now going to go up here, and this is how it's looking from the front. So that's an introduction to hand piecing. I hope you've found that useful, and really encourage you to give it a try. Start on something not too important at first, just make up a few shapes and try piecing them together. And if you've got any questions, you can send me an email or leave a comment. Thank you very much. Bye.